On the morning of October 13, 1841, 23 guests gathered to witness what Hartford's high society would later call the most shocking wedding ceremony in the city's history. Only minutes after tasting her first sip of the ceremonial wine, 19-year-old Bridget O'Sullivan collapsed at the altar of Trinity Episcopal Church. Her wedding dress spread across the floor as her body shook violently, white foam bubbling from her lips. Those seated closest swore they heard her final words, whispered in fear and pain, "The wine, it burns." 3 days later, investigators uncovered evidence of a carefully planned murder, so deliberate and heartless that the Hartford Courant refused to publish all the details, fearing the public's anger. The killer had been among the wedding guests, watching every moment with calmness, as though each step had been rehearsed for months. Before continuing with the story of Eleanor Peaton and the O'Sullivan family tragedy, we ask you to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Your support helps us keep uncovering these forgotten American mysteries. The truth of that autumn morning revealed a tangle of social rivalry, financial fear, and a mother's obsession that forever changed the balance of Hartford's powerful families. In 1841, Hartford stood at a turning point between old New England traditions and the new industrial age. The Connecticut River carried steamboats full of goods from New York, while factories rose along its banks, their chimneys competing with church steeples for dominance of the skyline. The city's population had grown to nearly 13,000, with Irish immigrants arriving in large numbers to work long hours in mills and on the railroads, chasing promises of opportunity. Among Hartford's oldest families, none were more respected than the Peatons. Eleanor Peaton, 48 years old and widowed for 6 years, ruled over one of the city's most admired homes on Prospect Street. Her federal-style mansion, with its perfect gardens and iron fencing, stood as a symbol of all that the Connecticut elite valued: stability, tradition, and unquestioned social authority. Eleanor herself had not been born into wealth. She was the daughter of a modest Hartford merchant, but rose in rank when she married Jonathan Peaton in 1815. Jonathan, heir to a shipping fortune built during the War of 1812, had chosen Eleanor for her beauty and intelligence, instead of her social background. Their marriage, based on love, had shocked some of Hartford's upper class. But Jonathan's success in growing the family's business into insurance and manufacturing silenced most critics. After 3 heartbreaking miscarriages, Eleanor gave birth to their only child, William, in 1817, whom she considered a miracle. She poured all her devotion into raising him, ensuring he received the best education. William attended Yale, studying law and literature, and returned to Hartford in 1839 to join the family business. Tall and scholarly, with his father's dark hair and his mother's sharp gray eyes, William was widely seen as one of Hartford's most desirable young men. When Jonathan suddenly died of a stroke in 1835, Eleanor inherited an estate valued at about $40,000, a fortune that made her one of Connecticut's wealthiest women. She managed it with strict control, determined to protect both the family's wealth and their social standing. The Peaton name alone could open doors across New England, and she intended to keep it untarnished. Meanwhile, the Irish migration to Hartford had grown throughout the 1830s, driven by poverty and crop failures in Ireland. These immigrants settled near the railroad depot, in overcrowded tenements with poor sanitation. They worked long hours for low wages, which angered native-born laborers, who felt their pay was being undercut. Among Hartford's elite, resentment grew. At Ladies' Aid Society gatherings, women whispered about Irish servants accused of stealing, Irish children fighting in the streets, and entire families packed into tiny rooms. Some asked quietly if these Catholic foreigners could ever truly fit into American life. It was into this uneasy climate that the O'Sullivans arrived. In 1839, Patrick O'Sullivan, a 38-year-old widower, brought his 4 children to Hartford, hoping for work. His eldest daughter Bridget was 17 at the time. She was striking, with auburn hair and green eyes that seemed to glow even during Hartford's gray winters. Patrick secured a position as a supervisor, at Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company, where his background with machines in Dublin's mills proved valuable. His income allowed the family to rent a modest but respectable home on Front Street, closer to Hartford centre than most Irish families could dream of. Bridget found work as a seamstress in a fashionable dress shop on State Street. Her skill with delicate fabrics and her softer accent made her popular with customers. It was at the Wadsworth Athenaeum's lecture series that she first met William Peaton. The lecture, delivered by a Harvard professor, focused on American literature and attracted Hartford's educated crowd. Bridget attended because her employer, Mrs. Catherine Hendris, encouraged her staff to improve themselves with culture. From the back row where working people sat, Bridget listened intently. When the floor opened for questions, she raised her hand and asked about the influence of Irish poetry on American writers. Her question was so thoughtful that people turned to look at her with surprise. William noticed at once. After the lecture, he approached as she gathered her cloak. "That was an excellent question about Irish influence," he said, removing his hat. "I'm William Peaton. I don't believe we've met." The Bridget blushed slightly but spoke clearly. "Bridget O'Sullivan, Mr. Peaton. I'm pleased to meet you." They walked towards State Street, talking about books and ideas. William discovered that, though her schooling had been limited, Bridget had read widely. Shakespeare, American authors, even poetry borrowed from a priest back in Dublin. She used Hartford's lending libraries whenever she could. When they reached the corner where they would part, William hesitated. "Miss O'Sullivan, would you like to attend next week's lecture? It's on American history. I think you'd find it interesting." The Bridget's smile lit her face. "I would like that very much, Mr. Peaton." Their courtship grew slowly and carefully. William knew the social risks of showing interest in an Irish working girl, but Bridget's intelligence and kindness made such worries seem unworthy. They strolled along the Connecticut River, attended lectures, and shared a connection that ignored class lines. For nearly 6 months, Elelina remained unaware. William had always been discreet, and she assumed his absences were due to business or social obligations with other young men of his rank. That changed on a hot July afternoon in 1840. Eleanor decided to surprise William at his office with a pitcher of cold lemonade and an invitation to the governor's summer reception. Climbing the stairs of the Peaton building, she heard voices from behind his door. William's familiar tone and a woman's voice she did not know. "My mother will never accept this," William said. "But I don't care about her approval anymore. I love you, Bridget. That's what matters." Eleanor froze on the stairwell, gripping the pitcher so tightly her hands whitened. "Your family's position in society," Bridget replied softly, her words carrying a faint Irish accent that made Eleanor's stomach turn. "I don't want to bring trouble between you and her. She gave so much for you." "You don't understand," William answered firmly. "She's controlled every part of my life since father died. Who I should marry, where I should live, how I should spend my time. I'm 23 years old and I have never made a truly important choice without her approval. That ends today." Paulinina pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding so loudly she worried they might hear it through the door. "When will you tell her about us?" the woman asked. "Soon. Very soon. I want you to meet her properly as my future bride. She will see what I see in you. Your cleverness, your warmth, your strength. She will have to accept that I have chosen the woman I wish to spend my life with." The scrape of a chair across the floor sent Elelina rushing down the stairs, leaving the untouched lemonade on the landing. She reached her carriage nearly breathless, commanding her driver to take her home at once. During the short ride back to Prospect Street, her shock quickly turned into a rage so sharp and heavy that it made her feel sick. An Irish girl, her William, heir to the Peaton fortune and name, was planning to marry an Irish immigrant. Everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed and plotted to protect, would be ruined by this. This nobody who had surely lured her innocent son with deliberate charm. That evening, William returned home for dinner, looking more cheerful than he had in months. Elenina studied him closely, noticing the way he hummed softly while carving the roast, the calm smile lingering at the corners of his mouth. She wanted to demand answers right then, but her years of social skill had taught her patience. She needed details before she could act with precision. "You seem very happy tonight, William," she said in a gentle tone. "Do I? Well, I believe I am. I've been thinking about making some changes in my life. Serious changes." "And what sort of changes would those be?" William set down his fork and looked straight at her. "Mother, I've met someone. A young woman of remarkable character and intelligence. I believe she may be the one I want to marry." Elena's hand shook slightly as she reached for her glass of water. "How lovely, dear. Is she anyone I know?" "No. But I want you to meet her soon. Her name is Bridget O'Sullivan, and she's—" He hesitated as though gathering courage. "She's originally from Ireland. Her family moved to Hartford 2 years ago." The water glass slipped from Elena's hand, shattering across her plate. "Oh, how clumsy of me," she murmured, rising quickly to ring for the servants. "You said O'Sullivan, an Irish family." "Yes, her father works at Colt's factory, and she has a position at Mrs. Ricks's dress shop." "Mother, I know what you must be thinking, but—" "I am not thinking anything, William." Eleanor cut in smoothly, her voice tightly controlled. "I'm only surprised. You've never spoken of this young woman before. I wanted to be sure of my feelings before telling you. But I am sure now. I love her, Mother, and I intend to ask for her hand." That night, Eleanor spent hours pacing her private sitting room, wearing a path into the Persian carpet. William's words replayed endlessly in her mind. He loved this Irish girl. He meant to marry her. The thought struck her again and again like a series of blows. A marriage to an Irish immigrant would tear down William's position in society. The best families in Hartford would close their doors to him. His children would carry the shame of mixed heritage, neither accepted by the established elite, nor welcomed by the Irish community that would call them traitors. Even more dangerous was the money. If William married this girl, Eleanor would lose her hold on family matters. As his wife, the Irish girl would have legal claims to the Peaton fortune. She might persuade William to aid her relatives, to fund Catholic efforts, to throw money into ventures that favored immigrants instead of the long-standing American families. Eleanor had not clawed her way from merchant roots to the peak of Hartford society, only to see an Irish outsider destroy it all. She would not watch her family's fortune poured into churches and needy cousins. She would not see the Peaton name dragged down by foreign poverty and superstition. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor quietly investigated the O'Sullivan family. She discovered Patrick O'Sullivan was thought of as dependable, but he had taken part in labor talks some considered dangerous. Bridget had a good reputation with her employer and customers, yet several society ladies whispered about the boldness of an Irish girl acting above her station. Eleanor also learned that the O'Sullivans attended Holy Trinity Church, the Catholic parish that many Protestants in Hartford eyed with suspicion. The thought of her grandchildren being raised Catholics, owing loyalty to a distant pope, horrified her. As summer slipped into autumn, William's bond with Bridget grew deeper. He took her to public gatherings, introducing her proudly to friends. Eleanor watched quietly as Hartford's polite surprise turned quickly into hushed whispers. The breaking point came in early September when William announced his plans to propose. "I've spoken with Mr. O'Sullivan," he told his mother at breakfast. "He's given me permission to ask for Bridget's hand. I plan to propose tonight." Eleanor set down her coffee cup with slow care. "William, I must urge you to think again." "Mother, please let me finish. I haven't spoken much of this before because I hoped it would fade. But now you are speaking of marriage, a lasting commitment that will shape not only your life, but the whole family's future." William's jaw clenched. "And what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying marriage is more than feelings. It's about social standing, shared beliefs, common ground. This young woman may be pleasant enough, but she comes from a world far removed from ours. What feels charming now will soon become trouble. These differences cannot be ignored. Her background doesn't matter to me. It should. It will matter to your children, who will have to find their place in society. It will matter to your partners in business, who expect certain standards. It will matter to everyone we know. William stood suddenly, his chair scraping across the floor. I'm disappointed in you, Mother. I thought better of someone who once married for love. Your father and I came from similar circles. We understood each other's duties. This is nothing alike. The only difference is your bias against the Irish. Ilinna's calm mask cracked. It isn't bias, William. It's truth. They are not like us. Their loyalties, their values, their ways are different. This girl will change you, and not in a good way. This discussion is finished, William said coldly. I will propose to Bridget tonight, with or without your blessing. After he left, Ilinna sat alone for nearly an hour, staring at her untouched breakfast. The choice was made. William could not be turned by reason or warning. He would marry this Irish girl, and when he did, her influence over the family's wealth and name would vanish, unless she found a way to stop it. The engagement of William Peaton to Bridget O'Sullivan appeared in the Hartford Courant on September 15, 1840. The short notice in the Society column sparked more talk than any other news that year. At tea parties and gentlemen's clubs, people argue whether William had gone mad or had simply been trapped by Irish charm. Ilinna wore the mask of gracious approval, while burning with anger inside. She attended gatherings where friends gave congratulations laced with pity. How modern of William, they said, their voices edged with gossip. I'm sure the girl is suitable enough. The worst thing came at a ladies' aid meeting, where Mrs. Harrison Fitzgerald, whose own Irish blood was politely ignored by Hartford society, made a sharp comment about the duty of keeping proper standards in marriage. Of course, we must show kindness to these immigrant families, she said, looking straight at Ilinna. But there are limits that must not be crossed. Ilinna forced a thin smile and turned the talk elsewhere, but the insult seared in her chest. She was being pitied, looked down on by women who once had bowed to her social power. The Peaton name, once a key to every door in Connecticut, had become the subject of whispers and sly remarks. During this time, Ilinna began to observe Bridget O'Sullivan with the focus of a commander studying an opponent's stronghold. She went to social gatherings where the couple appeared, quietly noting how Bridget carried herself, how she spoke, and how she interacted with Hartford's leading families. What she discovered only made her fears grow. Bridget was not the unsophisticated Irish country girl Eleanor had once hoped she would be. The young woman carried a natural grace that could not be taught, a brightness in her speech, and a warmth that drew others toward her with ease. Even some of Eleanor's harshest rivals among Hartford's ladies admitted, reluctantly, that the O'Sullivan girl showed remarkable composure for someone from such a modest background. What disturbed Eleanor even more was the obvious strength of William's affection. He gazed at Bridget with a tenderness Eleanor had never witnessed from him before. When they walked side by side, he adjusted his longer steps to match hers without even realizing it. When she spoke, he gave her his complete attention. And when others made sly remarks meant to belittle her, he defended her with a protective fire that reminded Eleanor uncomfortably of the way Jonathan had once stood up for her in the early years of their marriage. The wedding date was set for October 13th. William had suggested a quiet ceremony, but Bridget insisted on including both families and their closest companions. I want everyone we love to see us make our vows, she told him. I don't want anyone thinking we are ashamed of this union or trying to keep it hidden. Eleanor realized that such a public wedding would make her disgrace complete. Every influential family in Hartford would attend, if only to satisfy their curiosity about the Irish bride. The ceremony would be the subject of gossip for months afterward, locking the Peaton family name forever with social decline. As September turned into October, Eleanor's desperation deepened. She weighed many different ways of stopping the marriage from happening, till she thought of pretending to be gravely ill, so that William would be forced to delay the ceremony to care for her. She thought of bribing Patrick O'Sullivan to refuse his approval. She even considered threatening to cut William off from his inheritance completely. But each plan carried risks she could not afford. William might go through with the marriage regardless of her illness or her threats. A bribe could backfire badly if Patrick exposed her scheme to the community, and cutting William out of the estate would only strip her of influence forever while letting strangers inherit what Jonathan had built. The answer came to Eleanor during a restless night early in October. She was going through her late husband's business papers, searching for some legal means to secure control over the family fortune, when she found Jonathan's correspondence with an associate in New York who dealt in rare chemicals for industry. In one set of letters, Jonathan discussed several chemical substances used in manufacturing, including their risks when handled incorrectly. One particular letter mentioned arsenic oxide, a compound widely used in textile production and available through legal suppliers. Jonathan had studied its possible use in fabric treatments, but had chosen against investing because of the dangers involved. The letter described the substance in careful detail, a white crystalline powder, dissolving easily into liquids, nearly impossible to taste when mixed with strong flavors, and producing rapid illness with symptoms resembling common health problems. Most crucially, the writer explained that arsenic oxide was extremely difficult to identify without advanced chemical tests, the kind rarely performed when someone fell suddenly ill. Eleanor read the letter again and again, her pulse quickening as the truth became clear. Here lay a method to stop William's marriage in a way that appeared completely natural, tragic yet unavoidable. A sudden illness striking the bride during her wedding would shock the community, but not seem impossible. Young women sometimes collapsed under the excitement and stress of such occasions, especially those from humbler origins who might be overcome by the grandeur of it all. The plan shaped itself with alarming precision. Eleanor would secure arsenic oxide using Jonathan's business contacts, pretending she was continuing his research. She would find the chance to administer it during the wedding ritual, when all eyes were on the couple. And she would keep her composure so perfectly that no one would suspect her of anything beyond the grief of a heartbroken mother-in-law. On October 8th, 5 days before the ceremony, Eleanor traveled to New York City to visit Hartwell Chemical Supply. She boarded the morning train dressed in her most respectable travel clothing, Jonathan's business letters neatly folded as her credentials. Mr. Hartwell, a thin man with nervous hands behind wire spectacles, remembered Jonathan with fond respect. A cautious, methodical man, he remarked, always attentive to safety and proper methods. "How may I help you, Mrs. Pitton?" he asked. Eleanor explained that she was winding down her late husband's business dealings and wanted to finish his research into textile treatments. She presented Jonathan's letters and spoke with practiced knowledge about the proposed uses, having studied the details for days. Arsenic oxide. Hartwell muttered, checking his notes. "Yes, your husband was curious about its potential for fabric preservation. Do you intend to continue with the investment?" "I am still considering the possibilities," Eleanor replied smoothly. "But I would like to perform some small tests, first to better understand its behavior. Could you provide me with a sample?" Hartwell nodded, then went into the storeroom and returned with a glass vial containing about 2 ounces of white powder. "This should be enough for experimental trials. Please remember, it is very dangerous if swallowed or breathed in." Eleanor paid in cash and carefully tucked the vial into her reticule. On the train back to Hartford, she clutched her purse tightly, painfully aware of what she carried inside. But she felt no guilt. Instead, she experienced a grim relief that she had taken firm steps to defend her family's reputation. The final days rushed past in a haze of preparations. Bridget, in an effort of kindness, asked for Eleanor's help in arranging the reception. It was a gesture that struck Eleanor as both tender and infuriating. The young woman clearly wanted to win her approval through respect and inclusion. "I want you to feel that this celebration is yours as well, Mrs. Peaton," Bridget said while they reviewed the breakfast menu. "William speaks of you with such love. I hope, in time, you may feel affection for me too." Eleanor forced a polite smile and a gentle nod, all the while calculating how much arsenic oxide would be enough to bring about a quick yet natural-looking death. Too little might leave Bridget only weak, perhaps surviving. Too much might cause obvious and suspicious effects. Based on Jonathan's letters and her own research at Hartford's library, Eleanor settled on about half a teaspoon dissolved in wine. That would bring symptoms within minutes, resembling heart failure or overwhelming excitement. When the morning of October 13th arrived, Eleanor woke before sunrise, with a focus she had not known in months. Every step of the plan had been practiced repeatedly in her mind. She knew exactly what to do, and that knowledge steeled her resolve. The wedding was set for 11 o'clock at Trinity Episcopal Church, followed by a reception at the Peaton estate. Eleanor had offered to oversee the refreshments, giving herself full control over the ceremonial wine to be shared by the bride and groom during the blessing. She dressed with great care in her best dark blue silk gown, adorning her neck with the pearl necklace Jonathan had once gifted her on their wedding day. Her reflection in the mirror showed a calm and dignified woman, the image of a respected Hartford matron preparing for her son's marriage. None would guess at the deadly purpose hidden behind her steady eyes. The arsenic oxide lay concealed in a small silk pouch sewn into the inner lining of her dress. She had measured it the previous night, ready to dissolve in the wine at the chosen moment. She had practiced the motion again and again, perfecting the swift and natural gesture of emptying the sachet while seeming only to adjust the service. At 9 o'clock sharp, Eleanor arrived at Trinity Church to supervise the last details of the preparations.